You know what the most insulting thing about this entire offseason has been? The fact that Nick Castellanos keeps getting linked to the Toronto Blue Jays, like we're some kind of dumping ground for bad contracts and declining players, like we're the team desperate enough to take on $20 million for a 33-year-old outfielder who just posted career worst numbers across the board. And the worst part is knowing the Blue Jays, they're probably actually considering it. They're probably having serious internal conversations about whether to trade for a player. The Phillies are literally begging someone to take off their hands. That's not hyperbole. That's a direct quote. The Phillies are begging, and the Blue Jays are the exact kind of franchise dumb enough to answer that phone call. Let me paint you a picture of who Nick Castellanos is right now. Not who he was in 2021 when he made the All-Star team. Not who he was in 2023 when he had some big postseason moments. Who he is today, right now. A 33-year-old outfielder who hit .250 with a .294 on-base percentage and a .400 slugging percentage. That's a .694 OPS. For context, league average OPS is around .720. Castellanos was below replacement level according to both Fangraphs and Baseball Reference. He had an 88 OPS plus, meaning he was 12% worse than an average hitter. He accumulated minus 12 outs above average in the outfield, tied for the worst in all of baseball, and he's owed $20 million for next season. $20 million for that production. And the Blue Jays are supposedly interested. But here's where it gets really damning. Castellanos didn't just have a bad year statistically, he had a bad year behaviorally. He got benched by manager Rob Thompson in June for making what Thompson called an inappropriate comment when he was pulled for a defensive replacement. That benching ended a 236-game consecutive start streak. Then, late in the season, Castellanos publicly criticized Thompson for what he called questionable communication on players' roles. He's fighting with his manager. He's getting benched. He's creating controversy. And the Phillies desperately want him gone. They're not just willing to trade him. They're willing to eat a significant portion of his salary just to get him off the roster. That's how badly they want to move on. And the Blue Jays might actually take him. That's organizational negligence. The Phillies signed Castellanos to a 5-year, $100 million contract before 2022. In 4 seasons with Philadelphia, he's accumulated just 1.3 BWAR total. 1.3 wins above replacement over 4 full seasons. That's catastrophically bad value for $100 million. His league average offense has been completely offset by his terrible defense, and this past season was the worst of them all. Career low batting average, career low OPS, worst defensive metrics of his career. He ranked among the bottom 20 hitters with minimum 500 plate appearances in on-base percentage. Everything about his game declined simultaneously. That's not a slump. That's decline. That's age catching up. That's a player trending toward being completely unplayable. Now let me tell you why the Blue Jays would even consider this disaster of a trade. Because Castellanos hits right-handed. That's it. That's the entire appeal. The Blue Jays have too many left-handed bats in their lineup, and they're desperate for right-handed power, so desperate that they're willing to overlook everything else. The age, the contract, the decline, the defensive liabilities, the clubhouse issues, all of it gets swept under the rug because he swings from the right side and occasionally hits home runs. He hit 17 this past season, 17, for $20 million. The Blue Jays could sign a platoon DH for $3 million who would give them similar production. But that wouldn't make headlines. That wouldn't generate buzz. That wouldn't let them tell the fan base they made a move, so they'll probably trade for Castellanos instead. Here's what makes this even more insulting. Reports indicate the Phillies are willing to pay down a substantial portion of Castellanos' salary to facilitate a trade. Let's say they eat $15 million of the $20 million owed. That means the acquiring team only pays $5 million for Castellanos. That sounds like a deal, right? Wrong, because you're still giving up assets in the trade. You're still using a roster spot. You're still bringing in a player who was below replacement level last season. The Phillies would have to attach a prospect just to get someone to take him. That's how bad his value is right now. And yet I guarantee you the Blue Jays are considering making an offer that involves them giving up something of value, not receiving compensation for taking on a bad contract, but actually giving up assets to acquire him. That's the Blue Jays way. In the most pathetic part of this entire situation is that Castellanos has started working on playing first base. He recently went on MLB Network and said it was brought up to him, and he welcomes the opportunity to play first. You know why? Because his agent knows he's untradeable as an outfielder. His defense is so bad, his range is so limited, his arm is so weak that no team wants him in the outfield anymore. So he's pivoting to first base to create flexibility, to make himself more appealing as a trade candidate. Except the Blue Jays have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base for the next 14 years. So where exactly would Castellanos play? Designated hitter, they already have options there. Right field, their defense is already questionable. This is a player without a position trying to find a home. And the Blue Jays are considering providing that home despite having no clear role for him. Let's talk about the underlying numbers because they're even worse than the surface stats suggest. Castellanos' exit velocity declined. His hard hit percentage dropped. His barrel rate fell. His chase rate increased. His walk rate plummeted. There is not a single offensive metric that suggests he's about to rebound. Every indicator points to continued decline. He swung at 57% of all pitches in 2022, the highest rate in baseball. That approach works when you're making quality contact. It doesn't work when your bat speed is slowing down and you're hitting the ball weaker. Castellanos is a player whose entire offensive profile depended on aggressive swinging and hard contact. Now that the hard contact is gone, the aggressive swinging just leads to outs. That's not fixable with a change of scenery. That's age and decline. The Phillies want to clear space in right field for Justin Crawford, their 21-year-old top prospect. Crawford hit .334 with a .411 on-base percentage and stole 46 bases in AAA this past season. He's everything Castellanos isn't. Young, fast, athletic, controllable, cheap. Philadelphia would rather give at-bats to a rookie than continue paying Castellanos $20 million to be terrible. That tells you everything about how the Phillies view his future value. They're willing to take a financial hit and start a 21-year-old just to move on from Castellanos. And the Blue Jays are supposedly interested in acquiring the player Philadelphia views as so expendable they'd rather eat his contract than keep him. Make it make sense. Here's the really frustrating part. There are reports that the Blue Jays were linked to Castellanos back in June when he first got benched. Trade proposals were floated, social media buzz was created, and nothing happened. The Blue Jays had 6 months to watch Castellanos continue to decline, 6 months to see his metrics get worse, 6 months to observe his relationship with the Phillies deteriorate further. And after all that, they're still supposedly interested. That's not persistence. That's stubbornness. That's refusing to acknowledge that the player you were interested in 6 months ago is not the same player today. He's worse, significantly worse, and the asking price should be negative at this point. The Jim Bowden report from The Athletic specifically said the Phillies are begging someone to take Castellanos. Begging. That's not a word used lightly in reporting. That means Philadelphia has contacted multiple teams. That means they've made it clear they'll do whatever it takes to move him. That means they've probably offered to pay most of his salary and include prospects just to facilitate a deal. When a team is begging to trade a player, you don't acquire him. You let them release him and then sign him for the league minimum if you really want him. You don't give up assets. You don't take on salary. You let him hit free agency and make him prove he's worth a roster spot. But the Blue Jays don't think that way. They think making a trade looks better than signing a free agent. They think being involved in the market is more important than making smart decisions. Let me walk you through what's going to happen if the Blue Jays trade for Nick Castellanos. They'll give up a mid-level prospect, maybe someone like Davis Schneider or a pitching arm from Double-A. They'll take on $5 or $6 million of the $20 million salary, with Philadelphia eating the rest. They'll announce the trade with optimism about his right-handed power and veteran presence. For the first month, he'll be fine. He'll hit some home runs. He'll drive in some runs. The Blue Jays will feel vindicated. Then reality sets in. He'll go through a prolonged slump. His defense will cost them games. His at-bats will become automatic outs. By August, he'll be on the bench. By September, they'll be looking to cut him. And in the offseason, they'll release him or trade him with more salary retained. That's the Nick Castellanos experience. That's what every team that's acquired him recently has discovered. And the Blue Jays are about to learn it the hard way. There's also the issue of fit and roster construction. The Blue Jays just made the World Series. They're supposed to be building on that success. They're supposed to be getting better. Adding Nick Castellanos doesn't make them better. It makes them older. It makes them slower. It makes them worse defensively. It doesn't address any actual need. They need bullpen help. They need starting pitching depth. They need outfield defense. They need speed on the bases. Castellanos provides none of that. He's a designated hitter who can occasionally play the outfield poorly. That's not a championship piece. That's a roster filler. And $20 million roster fillers are how you waste your competitive window. What really burns me up is that the Blue Jays are going to use the right-handed bat excuse to justify this. They're going to say, we needed more right-handed power in the lineup. We needed balance. We needed protection for our left-handed hitters. And all of that might be true, but Nick Castellanos isn't the answer. He's 33 years old with declining skills and a massive contract. If you need a right-handed bat, sign someone in free agency. Trade for someone younger with upside. Don't acquire the player another team is begging someone to take. Don't take on someone else's problem and pretend you're solving your own. That's bad process. That's poor decision-making. That's everything the Blue Jays always do wrong. The Phillies have made it clear they'll likely trade or release Castellanos this offseason. Those are the two options. Trade or release, not extend, not bring him back, not give him another chance. They're done. They've seen enough. 4 years was enough to know he's not worth keeping. And the Blue Jays, who haven't seen any of that up close, who only have the stats and the reports to go on, think they can make it work. They think they're smarter than Philadelphia's front office. They think a change of scenery will unlock something. They're wrong. They're always wrong about these situations. And they're going to be wrong about Nick Castellanos too. Here's my final prediction. The Blue Jays won't trade for Nick Castellanos. Not because they're smart enough to avoid him, but because even they have a limit to their desperation. Even they can't justify giving up assets for a player the other team is begging someone to take. Castellanos will either get released by the Phillies or traded to some rebuilding team looking to reach the salary floor, and the Blue Jays will find some other declining veteran to overpay for instead. Someone slightly less terrible, but still not good enough. Someone who fits their pattern of making moves that look okay on paper, but don't actually improve the team. That's the Blue Jays way. That's what they do. And until that changes, until they learn to make smart decisions instead of headline-grabbing decisions, they're going to keep spinning their wheels while teams with actual vision pass them by. Nick Castellanos is just another example of that pattern. Another opportunity to make a mistake they'll somehow find a way to justify even though everyone else can see it's wrong.